Still broadcasting from the Civic Cypher Studios. Welcome back to the QR Code, where we share perspectives, seek understanding, and shape outcomes. The man on the other side of the microphone over there, the man who is an excellent father, a man who has always been very kind to me. He goes by the name of Q Ward, and he is your host.
The man he just described, his name is Ramses Ja, and he's the host. I just work here.
And stick around. We got a lot more show in store for you. We are going to be discussing the American Idol winner who had to deny the acceptance of the key to his city because of some Mississippi reasons. We're also going to be talking about they're canceling elections in Florida, and that feels a little weird, but also at the same time consistent with what we know. But right now, we're going to hear from the illustrious orator, the one and only Q Ward, talking to me, at least, about the folks celebrating freedom the loudest are also the folks denying freedom to others. Q.
First thing, Ramses, is you have to stop lying to these people.
That's an inside joke.
That's the first thing.
That's an inside joke. For those who don't know. That's funny.
Secondly, man, the hypocrisy of the term freedom in MAGA America.
Yeah.
And somehow the blending of freedom and lawlessness, right? Like being free should not mean being above the law. So as the right, loudly celebrates, they love to talk about the idea of freedom. They wave the flag, they wear the hats, they sing the national anthem with tears in their eyes. But somehow their version of freedom always seems to mean freedom from consequence and accountability, freedom from rules, freedom from the truth. Because when it's time for accountability, suddenly, oh my God, they're the ones being oppressed. The weaponization of freedom has been a very interesting thing to watch, Rams. Mm-hmm. Like, let's discuss the idea of freedom. The right uses it like a shield to dodge responsibility. When they get indicted, they call it a witch hunt. When they get subpoenaed, they scream tyranny.
January 6th.
If they get fact checked, you're censoring me.
Okay. Yeah.
When they get called out and held to account, oh my God, cancel culture by the woke left. They want you to agree that accountability and persecution are the same, that consequences are actually oppression, and that the rule of law itself is some deep state conspiracy. This is what we know to be true. Freedom without accountability is not liberty. It's lawlessness. It's corruption. It is no longer just a threat to democracy. It is actively in real time destroying it. Democracy only works when the rules apply to everybody, not just poor people, not just Black people, not just the powerless, not just protesters in the street, but the Proud Boys, the wealthy, the connected, the politicians, and even the president. Because the second that you carve out individual immunity for powerful people, you no longer have freedom. You have a monarchy. You have the rule of men, not laws. And you can't wrap yourself in the Constitution while also wiping your feet with it. You can't preach patriotism while refusing to answer for your actions. So there's this strong man fantasy that we've discussed a couple of times on the show already. And they idolize these guys because they break the rules. He says what he thinks and he doesn't play by the rules and he's fighting the system for the people, which directly translates to he's above the law and he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And they celebrate that. That's kind of a part of his appeal. They love it because deep down, they think those rules only exist to hold them back. That freedom gives them permission to dominate, to silence, and to punish. So they don't want freedom for everyone. They want license for themselves, license to abuse power, evade scrutiny, and never be held accountable. And here's the part they won't tell you because it's not a part of their marketing. When the powerful are above the law, the rest of us, yes, even you that voted for it, are beneath it. You'll still get a speeding ticket, even with your MAGA hat on. You'll still pay those fines. When the rent is due and you don't have the money, you will still get evicted, even if you show them that all 3 times you voted for Trump. That foreclosure, that arrest, it'll hit you too. Even if you had your Latinos for Trump flag on your lawn. Because the law never disappears. It just stops applying upward and only applies down. When leaders evade justice, corruption grows. Cronyism is the new norm. Your tax money gets stolen, your rights get trampled, and your vote diluted. The same people screaming freedom will jail you for protesting, will silence you for criticizing, and surveil and detain you for resisting. A little bit of truth. Real freedom requires accountability. Real patriotism demands facing hard truths. Real democracy doesn't work when some people are untouchable. If your idea of freedom is never having to answer for anything that you do, that is not liberty, people. That is tyranny. Ramses and I have decided we don't want any part of that, because loving this country does not mean excusing it at its worst. It means demanding that it be better and that it be its best for everybody.
You know, sometimes when you talk, I'm like, did you write that? Did you type that out? And I obviously I know how you produce the show, so I know that you didn't. That is just well said, well stated. And the truth of the matter is that, I mentioned January 6th. I think that those are the people that really, like, they're up right now because of all the pardons, but they are like kind of the physical embodiment of the people that kind of espouse that framework. And it's so hypocritical in its very nature, because on one side they'll cry oppression, on the other side they'll say, yeah, I deserve this or whatever. So in any event, let's move down to Florida. Okay. So canceling elections in Florida. Now, this sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to me too when I first saw this. I was like, what? There's no way. But then I took a look again and I was like, okay, Florida. Who's the they in Florida? Oh, okay. So maybe there is something here. So I uncovered it a little bit more to see what was going on. So I'm going to just get right into it and share it with you. This is from the Black Information Network. Miami officials are facing a lawsuit after they voted to cancel the city's upcoming November election, pushing it to next year. On Monday, June 30th, Miami mayoral candidate Emilio Gonzalez filed a lawsuit arguing that the move to postpone the city's election to November 2026 gives incumbent mayor Francis Suarez and the city commissioners an additional year of power without the consent of voters, per the Miami Herald. Quote, the commissioners unconstitutionally bypassed the democratic will of the people in a way that the Florida Constitution, the Miami-Dade Charter, and the city's charter expressly prohibit. Reminiscent of regimes in Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, or Cuba, the very places so many of Miami's people come from. Those in power, while in power, forced upon those voters what they think is best for elections going forward, and secured for themselves additional time in power without a vote of the electorate. That cannot stand, unquote. Last week, city commissioners voted 3-2 to move the city from odd to even year elections, effectively canceling the scheduled 2025 vote. Proponents of the move argued that aligning the city's elections with federal ones will increase voter turnout. City Attorney George Weissung defended the election change as appropriate and legal. Critics of the move have accused city officials of pursuing a self-serving extension of their terms. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Attorney General James Othmeyer both warned against changing the election date without asking voters first. So, yeah, this idea that I am now a politician, and as a result, I know more and I know better than the people who voted for me, is I see that kind of sentiment growing with elected officials. And this one is just like the latest, I guess, because when it comes to like, certainly like the MAGA folks, the passage of the big beautiful bill, you know, there were a lot of folks that voted for it. Famously, Marjorie Taylor Greene looked, she was, it might have been C-SPAN or something like that, where she was like, I wouldn't have voted for this bill if I had known this was in it, right? Meaning that she didn't get a chance to read it. She just kind of felt like she's an extension of Donald Trump's will, and this is what Trump wanted, and so forth. And then ultimately found out, hey, there's some stuff I actually do fundamentally disagree with in this bill. And that's something that is commonplace. That's just another example. But I think what I'm seeing is that the nature of the job of elected official has changed from, let me represent the interest of the people. Let me be an extension of the people's will. Let me be a representative of the Constitution of the United States, or the Constitution of the city or state or whatever that I'm representing. Let me be a representative of the laws of the land. Rather now it's more, let's take plays from Donald Trump's playbook. So when people said, you know, he fundamentally changed politics in this country, I think that they're absolutely right. And, you know, doing something like this, city commissioners voting to change the elections without consulting with the people. I'm not sure what the terms are in the city, but I can imagine if I voted for a 2-year term for a person and I was not fully sure about that vote, but I'm like, all right, we're going to give this guy a chance, 2 years, and they did something I didn't like, I would definitely be looking forward to voting them out. And these people are denied that. They have to wait another year under whatever government is there, and they didn't vote for that. And there's so many other ways you can do this. You can say, hey, next year we're going to elect people for 3-year terms so that we ultimately can switch to even years instead of odd years. And so there's so many different ways to approach this. But there's this kind of veneer of, I guess, credibility to what they're saying that they use to hide behind what's effectively a power grab. And this is something that we see quite a bit, you know, because we have to consume right-wing media as well. And the way that things are packaged and presented to the right in terms of media outlets, Fox News in particular, is there's this veneer of credibility that there's this almost like benefit of the doubt for legislation, for politicians' actions, for whatever. And even if we know that it's nonsense, even if we see the video, you know what I mean? They provide that cover so that the people reading it or the people consuming that media can say, okay, well, at least I have an excusable reason. No one else has to buy it, but I at least can say, well, yeah, they're trying to switch it to even years so they get greater voter turnout. Instead of looking at it for what it is, like, hey, look, these people are holding on to power longer than they were elected to govern for. So those are my initial thoughts there. What you got to add, Q?
Well, you provide a little bit of bail and cover for Marjorie Taylor Greene by saying she didn't have a chance to read it. That's nonsense. Donald Trump said so. Donald Trump said so. So this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
The idea that she didn't have a chance to read it is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think she said that.
Read it because Trump endorsed it. So whatever daddy says we're doing, or she absolutely knew what was in it, got some backlash from her constituents, and tried to back afterwards.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's important to call some things out, right? Because we keep hearing this, both parties are the same argument. I think it's important to point out that for a lot of politicians, the desires of their constituents and the people that voted for them went out the window as soon as they got elected.
Mhm.
That has been normal for a long time. As long as there's been money in politics and as long as there's been lobbyists and people who can buy their interest into our legislators, that's always been a problem. So until, and I'm saying until like this will ever happen, it'll never happen. They're never going to take money out of governing. It's why most people run. It's not so they can serve their constituency. It's so they can be rich and
Yeah.
powerful. That's the whole game for people on both sides of the aisle. We've always known that.
Mhm.
The difference is one of those parties has said, we're not going to work full time for you. The other party has says we are going to work full time against you while brainwashing their base into thinking everything they do wrong is the other party's fault. And that is what we're witnessing. This power grab won't be met with a bunch of disdain from the people that voted. Because the type of people that would say, you know what, we're not even going to do the election this year are Republicans for certain.
Yeah.
And their base has shown whatever they say the rules are the rules. They literally cannot disappoint the people that vote for them, even when they act directly against their best interest. We saw them gut services that would help predict, navigate, and respond to storms. Because they did that, people died, and their constituents blamed it on secret weather powers of the left. Literally.
Oh man.
So there's a gentleman, Trump supporter, Trump voter,
Mhm.
flag still waving in his yard,
Mhm.
whose wife was arrested and detained and I think deported by ICE. If not deported, absolutely arrested and detained.
Mhm.
You think this man took his MAGA flag down and spoke out against his Lord and Savior, Donald Trump? No, he did not. He extended that benefit of the doubt that you talk about and said that his president was trying to do the right thing. There is nothing that they can do to lose their base. And this is another use case, another test. Hey, let's get rid of elections in Miami to see what happened real quick.
Sure, I can see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
we did that and it worked. Oh, run it. That's what we on now. Now let's
Well,
get rid of the other ones.
in the
That man
big beautiful
told you
bill.
guys you wouldn't need to vote anymore. He told you.
Yeah. Yeah, he
He's
did
now
say
said out loud multiple times that they rigged the election. Nothing's happening. This is the worst nightmare that we've never been able to wake up from.
that. Yeah. And funnily enough, in the big beautiful bill, I think that they extended his capacity to like postpone elections. So
Of course they did.
yeah. All right. Well, for our final segment, little entertainment news here. American Idol winner denies receiving key to the city. It's from the Atlanta Black Star. What should have been a moment of joy for American Idol winner Jamal Roberts instead became a painful lesson in how celebration can quickly turn into hostility when racial bias and resentment rear their heads in the Deep South. Fresh off his history-making season 23 victory, where he pulled in 26 million votes, more than any other finalist in the show's long run, the Mississippi native found himself under fire, not for something he did wrong, according to the Clarion Ledger, but for simply being honored by the town of Laurel in his home state. A recognition, a ceremonial key to the city. For many, such a gesture would be seen as a high honor, but for Roberts, it became a source of stress, disappointment, and fear. He declined the offer after receiving threats that made it clear, even when you make your people proud, not everyone is happy to see you shine. Roberts' win was more than just a TV moment. The former PE teacher brought his full self to the Idol stage. He consistently gave credit to Mississippi for shaping him and never shied away from representing where he came from. But when news broke that he would be presented with a key to the city during the upcoming Noir and Blanc concert in August, things took a bleak turn. The announcement, made by event organizer Drake Page on social media, sparked immediate backlash from some Laurel residents. Critics claimed that Roberts didn't deserve the honor, arguing that others who had contributed more to the community should have been considered instead. The criticisms, however, didn't stay respectful. What started as online grumbling quickly escalated to threats, some so serious that Roberts had to publicly address the issue. Quote, you have people sharing the post, making threats, talking about they'll have guns at the event, unquote. This is according to Roberts on a Facebook Live. He continued, Quote, I worked with kids before American Idol, and it's crazy that kids can comprehend how to behave more than grown folk. It's a sad world we live in, unquote. The threats were real enough to make Roberts reconsider attending the ceremony altogether, and ultimately he declined the key. He made it clear he never asked for the gesture in the first place. Quote, I did not ask for a key to the city, he told his followers. Y'all should get it and give it to them, somebody that's deserving, I guess. You know, been working in the community for years, but I don't want it, unquote, he said. So yeah, as a person that has been through Mississippi, I'm connecting some dots. Most notably, folks saying that they're going to have guns at the event. That's pretty telling. Obviously, Roberts is black, Jamal Roberts. And people feeling like somebody else is more deserving, or whatever reason they don't want to see him get the key. Like the key actually does open the door, or that they run out of keys or at some point or something like that. It just feels kind of like silly. It's like baseless why people would be upset about this, other than we just don't want to see him get that shine because he's black. Now, normally we wouldn't talk about stuff that directly, but this one, it kind of just feels like it. And I think that for me, at least, I need to start saying things a little bit more plainly, because you do a good job of that, Q. You do say things very plainly. And one of the fears that I have, it's not really a fear, but one of the concerns, I should say, that I have is that if I say, oh, such and such is because I'm black, I feel like people have heard that so much that it might not really feel real to them, or they've kind of created enough distance, emotional distance from that sort of approach to where it doesn't really land. Hence the very fact-based, very very well documented approach that I have to journalism as a whole. Right? I try to lead people up to the line that they call it racism. And obviously you can't do that without saying racism. So of course I use that word, but you get what I'm trying to say. Because if I say it's racism, people are like, okay, you're black, you got an afro. Of course you're going to say that. But the truth is, man, I try not to see racism. I try not to, because I know that that won't be an excuse, especially if I lay it at the foot of just, Officer White, right? But again, having spent some time in Mississippi, having an experience, I only have one memory from Mississippi. It was with you, and it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I know that Mississippi is a place where prejudice is strong, racism is strong, and that's the only memory that I have. And indeed, the type of prejudice, the type of racism that I'm referring to is very decidedly anti-black. So much so that even black people have the capacity to be anti-black, as was the experience that I endured. Now, I don't want to talk this one all the way up, but this one feels kind of sad to me, because two things can be true: the people that are honoring, that are helping, children in the community or whatever, and people that are winning American Idol. That both of those things can be true. You can have two people honored in the same ceremony, right? But to say, I'm going to bring a gun to this ceremony, the threat being that I'm going to end your life if you actually do receive this key, feels like it comes from really only one facet of this country. That is a decidedly racist facet of this country, because there's no other excuse, no other explanation for it. I wouldn't even say, in my view, there just isn't. There's no reason to threaten somebody's life for being honored for this. And the worst part about this is that now we live in a society that like politics, like the framework, the legislative framework of this country turns a blind eye to this sort of thing. It says this isn't happening, which means that everybody who I would be concerned about not being able to lay this at their feet also have more grounds to turn a blind eye turn a blind eye to this. And the sad reality is that people like me with our big afros can't, because it actually still very much shapes our lives. So my thoughts, yours, Q.
I wish the most obvious answer wasn't always the answer.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
I wish we didn't get made to be the bad guy for calling out the very obvious answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most frustrating and sad part about that Mississippi memory is that it was completely expected.
Yeah.
I recall not wanting to stop in Mississippi at all when you wanted to stop and take a photograph, because my fear was exactly something like that happening to us.
Yeah.
So again, just proven right as immediately as we could be that this was not somewhere we wanted to be, especially at the time that we were there. Instances like this, where it's just so flagrantly racism, happen daily, multiple times a day, for so many people all over this country. And because we get accused of seeing racism where it doesn't exist, we're shy to say it when it's obvious. As you've probably noticed, if you're listening to this show for more than the first time, I am not shy about calling it exactly what it is, because in most cases, it's very obviously what it is. It's the only thing logically that could apply.
Mm-hmm.
This guy from your city goes on one of the most popular television shows in the history of television and wins a contest that people that look like us are very unlikely to win. People from Mississippi, least likely to win. And instead of that entire community being proud of this young man, they see the black guy. And for some of them, it's against their very upbringing, their very culture, their very genetics to celebrate someone black having some success. So I don't care that you're from here. I don't care that you amplify our community, that you make our whole town look better. I don't care that you shine a positive light on everything that we do here. You're black. So you don't get to come here and be celebrated. You don't get to come here and celebrate and have an honor in your name. Not with that skin, not with that hair, not with our heritage, because we will still fight to fly the Confederate flag here before we will celebrate you having some type of victory and representation of this town. As a matter of fact, if you show up, we'll be there with guns. This is America, folks. And somehow we're 100 years ago. It is a really, really crazy place to be, man.
I know, man. But you know, our job is to talk about it, and you know, I couldn't ask for a better teammate. You know, I think that for a lot of folks, we provide some insight into how things look from a different perspective. You and I, we get to see the world from a, let's call it a white perspective, you know, but not very many people get to see the world through someone else's perspective. And so, you know, for better or worse, we do provide that. And in our own small way, I hope that we're helping. So yeah, let's keep going. All right. That's going to do it for us here at the QR Code. Today's show was produced by Chris Thompson. If you have some thoughts you'd like to share, please use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. Also, be sure to check us out on all social media at Civic Cypher, CIVICCIPHER. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media.
I am Q Ward on all social media as well.
And join us next time as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the QR Code.